Hello everybody, Hamster Sales here with another Diablo 3 skills calculator video. The second one I'm doing. This time it is for the Demon Hunter. First one was on the Barbarian. That build was more inspired around a single mechanic. With the Demon Hunter I took a long look at all of her skills and didn't really see any one skill I fell in love with, but all of them seemed rather cool, so I came up with more of a general build that just looked like a lot of fun to play. Demon Hunter's got a lot of evasive abilities and a lot of cool ranged attacks, and that seems kind of unique to her among all the Diablo characters, the evasive element, so that's something I probably focused on more than anything. And her ability to slow down opponents seemed pretty cool too. Quick overview of the Demon Hunter. She has two resources. She has Hatred and Discipline, two of the most interesting resource names I've ever heard for an RPG character. Hatred is a rapidly replenishing resource, something that just is you're gonna have a fair amount at all times. You're no doubt not going to be able to spam endlessly abilities that require hatred, but that's how Blizzard describes it on their page and how I've seen it in action. In the Demon Hunter videos, I've seen Hatred as a resource that replenishes rather quickly, and then Discipline is something that regenerates less quickly, and some skills give you the ability to regenerate Discipline. So I've kind of built my character with that in mind. I'm by no means a Demon Hunter expert. I probably checked out these skills quite a bit less than the Barbarian, so if anybody else has any further understanding of the Demon Hunter, please don't feel afraid to comment in the comments below. So with that said, the first ability I chose was Hungering Arrow. It is from the offensive tree, which is essentially just hatred skill tree. I think I've been calling it hatred correctly, right? It's essentially the hatred spending tree. Then you've got your discipline spending tree, and she only has a single. The Demon Hunter only has a single utility ability, single long cooldown ability that kind of just restores all your discipline. One that I didn't find too interesting, so I didn't choose it for one of my 6 active skills here today. So that out of the way, the first skill I chose was Hungering Arrow. Seems like a very strong basic attack. It's kind of a homing arrow. I forget what they called that in Diablo 2. They call it guided arrow. I think they called it for the Amazon. Anyway, very similar, just as a high damage single target attack. And it can pierce through targets, so potentially it can do damage to multiple enemies. And onto the rune I chose is called Spray of Teeth, an interesting name for a rune. Essentially, there's a successful crit on your target causes a huge explosion, which does a bunch of damage. And at a relatively, what seemed like a low hatred cost to me, I feel like I'll be firing this ability a lot. So should be seeing a lot of explosions going off. One of my passive abilities also takes advantage, gives me a very high crit chance. So I figure this will be exploding a lot. Some other cool runes for this one: fire damage, chance for the arrow to pierce increased, and this one here kind of reminds me of that one lightning ability the Amazon had, the Javazon Thunder Fury, something like that, where when it hits the enemy, it splits into multiple attacks. So that seems like a cool rune choice, but I really like the explosion one. Seems like it would be strong on bosses too. That's kind of a pet peeve of mine that you might remember from my Barbarian video. I like abilities that are potentially effective against single targets, against bosses. And it seems like the 240% weapon damage explosions would be equally effective against a single target, or at least very effective against a single target. So moving on, second ability I chose was Entangling Shot. I like the idea of snaring my opponents when necessary. Takes a similar 15 hatred to fire, and it can without the rune, it can snare up to 2 enemies by 70% for 2 seconds, which seems extremely useful for a very mobile, ranged base class. And the rune I chose was to have it hit up to 9 targets, so I went fairly vanilla with this one, the term I tend to use for things I consider somewhat boring. But the idea of hitting 9 targets and slowing them down all at the same time seems extremely useful. This one's potentially damaging. I mean, all these numbers are kind of meaningless without having played the game for a long amount of time, but the ability to electrify and snare your opponent seems pretty cool. But no, I just chose the one that made it hit 9 targets. It seems like if you want to slow down a huge crowd, this would be the way to go. So it's a big AoE kind of crowd control ability. That's what I've turned it into with this rune. The next and last hatred consuming ability I chose was Evasive Fire. Seems like a really cool ability. You move and shoot at the same time. Seems extremely cheap too. Only takes 5 hatred. Now it doesn't consume discipline if you're close to a target. When you're close to a target, as you can see in the description here, it says you will backflip. So if an enemy is in your face, clawing at you, you will launch a ranged attack at him and backflip simultaneously, which seems extremely cool to me. Kind of builds into the evasive theme I was kind of going for. And the rune I chose got rid of the discipline cost. So was the main thing that attracted me to it. I was kind of concerned that I didn't have anything that either conserved or gained me discipline throughout my build. So when I was choosing my runes, that appealed to me a lot. And the fact that it turns your attacks into lightning damage seems like it could be very useful. Resistance is very important in Diablo 2, especially on hell difficulty. So if the same thing were true in this game, it seems like it would be very useful to have a lightning-based attack in addition to the primarily physical and I guess fire-based attacks that the Demon Hunter seems to have with her explosive abilities. So that's why I chose that for Evasive Fire. The next ability I chose was Vault. It's my first discipline-consuming ability. From down here, I chose 3 of them, as you can see. It causes her to tumble acrobatically 35 yards. If you've seen this in use in videos like I have, you'll notice it's kind of essentially a teleport for the Demon Hunter. I think you have to have line of sight on your target, unlike the Sorceress, who I believe can teleport through walls. But yeah, just like she could in, or the Wizard, just like the Sorceress could in Diablo 2, that is to say. Demon Hunter does require a line of sight, but it's essentially a line of sight teleport. And yeah, it looks really cool. Definitely builds into the evasiveness theme. Kind of like Barbarian, it seems like why build a Demon Hunter if you're not flipping all over the place, looking cool and shit. So had to have Vault. And the rune I chose I really like. It causes enemies to fly backwards. Within 8 yards, you're just knocking everybody all over the place while you're evading them. And stunning them for 4.5 seconds seemed extremely powerful to me. So yeah, while I was evading, I liked the idea of sending people flying and knocking them stupid so I could massacre them. Yeah, and that's why I chose that rune. Pretty self-explanatory. This one had a lot of cool choices though, like Trail of Cinders. Essentially builds in the Sorceress ability from Diablo 2, the Blaze ability, to leave a trail of fire wherever you go when you're flipping around. That seemed equally cool. It was kind of hard for me to choose between these two. Some of these might actually be better. I mean, this reduces the discipline cost by 50% if you use it twice within 5 seconds. Seemed very cool. This one increases the range to 70 yards. I don't know if you can even see 70 yards on your screen in the game. So I'm not sure how that would work. I guess you just keep tumbling out off screen until you stopped at a distance of 70 yards. And as you travel, you shoot arrows with this one. That's another very tempting rune to have. I could easily have picked that one. 205% weapon damage as you flip around. Maybe I will choose that one. I don't know. But since I have this already selected, I think I'll stick with the knockback and stun rune. All these seem extremely powerful, so can't really go wrong with a lot of those. The next ability I chose was Shadow Power. Causes you to draw on the power of the shadows, increasing your attack speed by 50%. Seemed like an extremely powerful self-buff, especially for a ranged DPS class, essentially increasing your damage output by 50%, and of course we have a slick rune to go with it. This one giving me 55% movement speed, so in addition to firing extremely quickly, I'll be able to quickly reposition if things go sour. It just seems like an overall extremely powerful self-buff, even though the discipline cost, from the sounds of it, would be extremely high, but hopefully I'm conserving that with the Evasive Fire rune and just playing smart. But yeah, seemed like a fun little self-buff, and keeps in line with the evasiveness theme of my build here, the 55% movement speed. And the last active ability I chose was Sentry. Kind of reminded me of the trap from the Assassin in Diablo 2. One of the traps, it just creates a turret that fires arrows at people for 40% weapon damage, last 20 seconds. Pretty standard, bland-sounding ability, but the runes for this one were extremely cool. The one I chose creates a tether between you and the sentry that does 240% weapon damage every second to every enemy it touches. Seems like that would be extremely powerful when you're kiting around enemies. They're probably going to focus on you more than your turret, so you're going to kind of create this tether of death between you and your turret. It seemed really cool. It seems like you could position the turret wherever you wanted, and I have all these movement-based abilities and speed-increasing abilities, so it seems like it would be very powerful. What was the other one that I thought was extremely cool? This one turns it into a rocket. This rune here at the bottom, the obsidian runestone, turns your turret into a homing rocket firing turret, which seemed extremely cool. Was there any other ones that really caught my eye? The other ones are kind of boring, but yeah, these two seemed extremely cool. And I went with the tether one. It seemed like that'd be really fun to control. The passive skills for the Demon Hunter didn't excite me too much, so I'll go over those pretty quickly. This one reduces the discipline cost by 20% of all my discipline consuming skills. Pretty self-explanatory. Gotta save that discipline. My most powerful abilities do require that discipline, so seemed like a good choice. This one increases my crit chance by 3% every second, and then that bonus is reset every time I get a successful critical hit. So it kind of ensures you won't go too long without a critical hit. It takes some of the RNG out of the equation, and overall, of course, will give you more critical hit as you play. And my third passive ability is called Cull the Weak. Damage against slowed enemies increased by 20%. 20% a large damage buff, and since I have this ability that snares 9 enemies at a time, I figure that would be a strong passive skill for me. And I think that's going to about do it for the Demon Hunter. Please let me know what you thought about this build, what you think about these videos. As my second in the series. I do intend to do all 5 at this point, and I should get back to casting StarCraft 2 very soon. But yeah, please let me know what you thought about this build, and comment, rate, subscribe if you like me, that type of stuff. Thank you very much for watching.